Thanks very much. What prompted Joe to think about this session was this statement by Vicky Phelan, which is quoted in your brochure. And in the brochure it says, "This simple but so bravely relevant statement goes to the heart of one of the great failings of public life in this country, which has been commented upon so often in this MacGill forum. We don't have accountability in politics, the civil service, the HSE, An Garda Síochána, banking, and in public life in general. We have lots of reports, inquiries, and so on, with recommendations for reform that never get implemented. That is the state of play. And I'm also a member of the Commission on the Future of Policing, and you could have people up here telling their story about the injustices they have suffered in the hands of the justice system. Now, I want to lay down a couple of very basics here. What is accountability? The official definition of accountability from the Department of Public Expenditure is that it involves external scrutiny with the obligation to submit to explaining and justifying your past conduct or actions with the possibility of consequences arising. And that's where a big part of the failure is. If there are no consequences, you have impunity. And that's what applies in so many areas of Irish public life. So that's the standard. Explain, justify, with the implication of consequences arising. So what do we have, actually? I'm quoting Pat Rabbitt from 2010. Without statutory reform, the system of accountability we pretend to operate in this country is grounded in a lie. It enables civil servants to hide behind the skirts of ministers and ministers to avoid responsibility. If questions are asked about who actually decided what, when, and why, the corporate veil descends on the entire department. There is what one person called a Faustian pact, a deal between very senior officials and government ministers. What about the state of account? That's the broader picture of the culture, if you like, of accountability in Irish life. What about accountability in the health service? I'm quoting from Dr. Tracy Cooper, who brought a new standard to investigations in the health service as head of HICWA when she left Ireland in 2014 to go back to Wales. The problem is we have never had any consequences if there are repeated failures. Nothing really happens. We have not yet cracked accountability. On another matter, Tony O'Brien, CEO of the HSE, said, "The HSE does not have the legal or HR tools to hold managers to accountable," which was referenced. There's no system of accountability for managers. Now, the context in which he was saying that was after a huge report, 2 inches thick, into the failures in Portlaoise Hospital, which saw the death, unnecessary death, of a number of infants. And that report indicted several layers of management. They were named in it, and the HSE tried to block the naming, redacting it, and so on. But to this day, nearly 5 years on, the process of holding managers to accountable is still in train. And that's the state of play. So they don't have the legal tools. So you could take a position, viewing all of that, you could say, well, there's no accountability. There's no accountability. But I said this to somebody recently, and they said, "Are you joking, Eddie? What about all the people who lost their jobs in the Department of Justice? 2 ministers, 2 Secretary Generals, Noreen O'Sullivan, Police Commissioner, Martin Callan, Police Commissioner, and others beside, all lost their jobs and lost their reputations. And in the HSE, Dr. Flannelly is gone, Antonio O'Brien is gone. And not only have they lost their jobs, but their reputation is damaged. Who would hire them today, for example? So you're kidding me, Eddie. There is accountability, and with very, very serious consequences. That's accountability for you. Well, it isn't. It's what I will call bad accountability, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the scandals that were revealed were not revealed by proper internal accountability processes. They were revealed by the likes of Vicky and other people, courageous people who stood against the system and spoke out. And so you can go through a long list of them. Vicky Phelan, Maurice McCabe, Louise O'Keeffe in the case of the educational system, the two young analysts in the Guards who said the homicide figures were wrong and were demonised internally by senior people. And there's a long list of people. The nurse in the Drogheda Hospital that was referred to earlier, the Lourdes Hospital document. So that's how the things were revealed, not by a normal system of control and risk management. The second feature of what has happened, which makes it bad account, the system withheld documents in every case. Judge Charlton had to demand that they go back in the Department of Justice and do another trawl to see if the emails are there. And oops, they discovered the emails are there. You've heard about the failure to get hold of people's own personal documents, which is still actually a problem in the case of this particular scandal. You also have evasion in parliamentary questions, the answers to parliamentary questions. A wonderful word which I picked up from Margaret, which I'll use again. The information is filtered. It is sanitized. It is diminished. It is kind of trivialized. So it doesn't tell the truth. It doesn't call it, which of course is a deceit. Dr. Coffey, for example, quoted here this morning by I think it was Vicky, it's not a patient safety issue, okay? So you're all the time dampening this down, kind of don't frighten the horses. And then what you have is the person who's in focus, whether it's Tony O'Brien or Dr. Flanley or whoever else, refuses to go. They say, I did nothing wrong. And I'll come back to that. They may not have done anything wrong. And the government continues to express full confidence in them. Okay? This person, we have full confidence in them. Think of the Garda commissioners. Meanwhile, the people who are at the centre of this, like Vicky and others, Louise O'Keeffe in other contexts, they're put through the ringer in the course as if they're a criminal. They're demonised. They're marginalised. So that's what happens. That's what. And what happens then is there's outrage, there's editorials in the paper, there's public outcry, there's letters to the newspapers, there's people going on television, people like these people here go on and they speak up, and a head of steam builds up, and then the government cuts somebody loose. Okay? So Tony O'Brien has to go, somebody else has to go, somebody else. Noreen O'Sullivan has to go. So the government delivers a head on a plate to produce a catharsis, relieves the political pressure, satisfies the public demand that someone has to pay for this. This, my friends, is not accountability. It is political expedience, it's a sacrificial lamb, and it is not accountability. Now, that kind of rough justice, where people are cut loose without due process, and I repeat, many of these people may well have deserved to lose their jobs, but they may not, when you investigate what actually went on, and I'll illuminate that in a second. But the problem, the question has been posed here, why after all of these years nothing is changing? That kind of accountability makes things worse. Humiliating exits without due process makes things worse for a number of reasons. It solidifies the Faustian pact. By Jesus, the next time this happens, we're going to be even tighter together because we're in this together. Secondly, if a figurehead is cut off and let go in humiliating circumstances, lots of others who have questions to answer go scot-free. You never discover, as Margaret said, the full picture of why the hell it happened. You never get to the bottom of it, thereby guaranteeing repeats. And this whole story this morning, Vicky has regaled you with them. Repeat, 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 because they never got to the bottom of what happened in the first place. It creates a climate of fear and reluctance to act or take responsibility. And also, it's difficult to hire good people to do the job. Who would want to be head of cervical check today? Who would want to do screening in a lab today when you have this atmosphere of fear? So this kind of so-called accountability, which really amounts to rough justice, to serve largely political purposes, to take the heat off the political system, is not accountability. Now, Dr. Scally is investigating what went wrong, and here are some of the questions. There's a certain set of instruments or infrastructure you need to have proper grown-up accountability. One of them is external oversight, governance. Tony O'Brien was appointed with a tap on the shoulder. He didn't go through a proper recruitment process. And then James Riley took away the board. There is no board. This is an organisation of 120,000 people delivering healthcare, a budget of 14 or 15 billion, and there is no board to whom he can speak, get advice, or anything else. That's one of the things that went wrong. Who's accountable for that? You can see James Riley scrapped the board. The government promised to replace it when it took office. And now, only under pressure from this case, is it saying, oh, we better do it. Where does accountability lie there? Second thing is what's called role clarity. What am I responsible for? What's the lab responsible for? Who's supposed to tell the patient? Is it you? Is it me? The lack of role clarity. In the case of policing, role clarity was described as an amorphous blob. And you saw the cartoon there. Pass the parcel around. That's missing. Who's responsible for that? Not enough resources. You're going to see lots and lots more newspaper headlines about TUSLA, the Child Protection Agency. We had a children's rights referendum. We had children, we have the children's rights. We set up TUSLA. We have a minister for children, and then we don't give it the resources. So there are thousands of children, as the last time I read about it, deemed to be at risk. We don't have a social worker attached to them. Who's accountable for what there? Can you really hold a senior manager in TUSLA accountable? Maybe you do, if they don't do certain things. But there are lots of things that are gone wrong because the infrastructure for accountability is not there. Risk management systems, contract reviews of third-party suppliers like the labs, internal audit, and so on. And also, as I've mentioned already, the legislation is not there. That we don't have the HR or legal tools to hold people accountable. So before you hold somebody accountable with serious consequences like losing your job and reputation, there has to be a system which has that kind of infrastructure in place. Now you can have all the infrastructure in place you want, and it won't work unless you have a healthy culture. Now we could spend all day here talking about the culture. It was described by Stephen here as a culture of protect, deny, and silence. Protect, spin, minimize, filter was the word used by Margaret. A culture that puts loyalty to colleagues and protection of the institution before the truth. That's a quotation from Judge Smithick talking about the guards. You could apply it straight, chapter and verse, to the case we just heard. Professional communities. The obstetricians and gynecologists in Ireland initially did not act with integrity in investigating the behaviour of Dr. Neary. In many cases, people have to go outside the country to get legal and professional medical advice in cases taken against the HSE. So there's a closing of ranks. And once there's closing of ranks, the people who have blown the whistle are described as disgusting. You remember that one? Not team players. I blew the whistle in one case in what I was obliged to do as a consultant to an organisation. I was called a zealot. So the person who has taken this, had the courage to speak up, is demonised and framed as a crank, which I've heard Maurice McCabe described of. And the other thing about the culture is, how do you have open disclosure when the name of the game is blame? How can you possibly do that? So there's fear within the system created by what we have considered to be accountability. And you have a sense of impunity. Official policy is that sacking should never be needed. Okay? So ultimately, where do you peel away the onions here? Peel away the layers of the onion. Ultimately, there is really no political will to create a culture of accountability. Spurred on by Pat Rabbitt's impassioned plea in 2011 that I referred to, that the system we have is grounded in a lie, The 2011 Programme for Government cited a huge accountability gap. So in 2011, the government said, hands up, we have a huge accountability gap. So therefore, we will pin down accountability at every level, from ministers down, with clear consequences for success or failure. And we will legislate for a reformed code of laws, etc., etc. We're going to crack this, we're going to deal with this once and for all. 7 years later, this promise has not been fulfilled. And you could say, why not? Again, quoting Pat Rabbit, those who have most to lose from being held personally responsible will resist most. Those responsible for holding others to account, so very senior people who should be holding somebody down here to account, are often compromised. The people they're going to hold to account know what these more senior people have done, are party to, or complicit in. And also, I think there's a real issue for public servants, officials, civil servants, officials in the HSE, who are still prone to sitting on trouble until somebody blows the whistle. They know it's there, it's in the files. They will spin and filter the information to protect the minister, when their first primary duty is not to protect the minister, but the public interest. As, for example, Dr. Coffey, in Vicky's case, describing it as not a patient safety issue. So, what does the cervical check, I'm just finished now, what does the cervical check debacle tell us about our governance and accountability? I'm afraid to say that we have not yet cracked accountability. We haven't done it, okay? And in particular, personal accountability. There's little prospect of cracking it soon, as far as I can see. And one of the biggest challenges in bringing about personal accountability is that when an individual, like Vicky and Stephen and others and the others I've mentioned, when they challenge the state or the HSE or the guards, the state has anonymity. The HSE did this. Cervical Check did that. The guards did this. The department did that. Anonymity. They have bottomless pockets. It is no skin off their nose that 2 million was paid out or 100,000 paid out. Bottomless pockets. While the state pursued Louise O'Keeffe for her costs and threatened to take away her house, and also they have endless patience. People campaigning for these kinds of changes will go through 6 ministers for health, 7 secretary generals, and so on, and they're still not getting justice. So, do we have any hope for reform? Our best hope for reform is what you've heard today, ladies and gentlemen. Reports and inquiries, we have them. They're that high. And they have not shifted the ground. The only thing that will shift the ground are the personal stories that you've heard poured out today. And we have them in other domains. Think of David Norris's championing of the cause of gay people. Think of Lucia O'Farrell, who has challenged the justice system in regard to the killing of her son. She stood in this hall here and pleaded with the minister and the chief of police. Think of Louise O'Keeffe, Maurice McCabe. These are heroes, ladies and gentlemen, and therein lies our best hope of reform. Thank you very much.